Right, hello there everybody, Adam Clery of FourFourTwo here for you today, and Man United just beat Man City. Who saw that coming? Sorry, what's that? Everybody did. Right, yes, okay. Now, it would be very easy to simply look at the score and the little numbers next to the goals and be like, aha, yes, a classic big game mugging. Manchester United have done the old smash and grab, but that was not what happened here. Now, by the end of this video, we are going to have explained how a team as supposedly good as Manchester City are end up in a defensive situation this catastrophic. But before that, I'm going to show you why Man United deserved that. Right, so to start, a very quick look at the teams. The most interesting thing for Manchester City was they've gone back to 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏𝗠𝗘 as sort of the sitting one in the six. There are pros and cons of doing that, but also Matheus Nunes, he is now the left back, which doesn't feel like a terrible decision in theory. But for Manchester United, we've got the first sort of like high-level glimpse, I think, here of what this Amorim era is supposed to be about and how this system is supposed to function. Now, if you are new and you've not watched the 400 million videos explaining it, quick crash course. It is 3 centre-backs at the back, all with slightly different jobs. 2 nice sitting holding midfielders who do various different things. 2 wing-backs providing all the width down both sides. 2 dynamic number 10s who play in these half spaces but have different roles. And then 1 dedicated centre-forward who's supposed to get all the chances. Case in point, this is from the opening couple of minutes. You can see the shape very, very neatly illustrated here. This is how they play. But a lot of people do not like the back 3 in the Premier League because they think it's overkill. Because when you were defending, as you can see in that picture, you do end up with a back 5. And to some people, that's too many defenders. But it is, very specifically, very good against Manchester City because they will do absolutely everything when they're building up to end up with a front 5. So then, of course, if nothing else, you do at least end up man for man in those attacking situations, and it becomes harder for them to do anything in the final third. But what Man United did specifically nullified City completely. So you can imagine in these scenarios, this is obviously Erling Haaland, but the two either side of him tend to be like a Foden or a De Bruyne type who actually want to play a little bit deeper to find the space to create chances for the other 3. And what Man United did really well was they told De Ligt and Martinez, just follow them around, really get at them. And it didn't really matter how deep or how wide they dropped. Those 2 outside centre-backs were clearly instructed to just follow them around and make sure they had a very, very unpleasant game. And it worked superbly. Like, Martinez in particular was really funny with it because he would just follow that City number 10 around like he was a really hungry dog. And they had like a string of cartoon sausages hanging out of their pocket. But anyway, yes, that of course then limits their time and space on the ball, makes it harder for them to do things. But the more important thing is it means these 2 haven't got to worry about any of the attackers behind them. They can then press whatever's going on in City's midfield. They can support the front players. And you can see from this graph here, they've almost got that perfect. I think Amad should be here because if they do turn the ball over, they can immediately go and stretch City. But the basic principles there, go man for man, harry those 2 wide 10s, man mark Haaland, worked excellently. So excellently, in fact, that across the 90 minutes, according to Opta, who I trust on these things, Man City registered a grand total of 0 big chances. I'm not entirely sure what the threshold for big chances is, given they did score a goal and should maybe have had another one, but it was 0. 0 big chances. And just to make that seem even worse, Southampton got beat 5-0 off Tottenham in just the first half of that game, and in those 45 minutes, they got 2. But yes, as I mentioned, Manchester City did score a goal, and for a very long time that looked like it would be enough to probably win the game, and they scored from a corner. Or more accurately, Manchester United conceded from a corner again. 8 of their 19 goals conceded in the Premier League this season have been from corners. That is not just too many, that is insanely many. I think it works out at like 45% almost or something like that, and it needs addressing really, really urgently if they want to do anything this season. And it is, not to pass the big bold buck here, but it's a hangover from Erik ten Hag. That being said, I don't actually think Manchester City's goal comes from anything bad that Man United do. It takes an enormous deflection as De Bruyne puts the ball in. And I think if you actually pause it here and you look at the setup, that's actually really good defensive positioning. Like, pretty much any ball you could expect De Bruyne to put in, one of those players will deal with it first. It's just that it then loops up into the air and you can't really do anything about that, and it ends up dropping between two players who you probably don't want challenging for it. So, still bad they concede these, but I don't think this one is a terrible example. The Arsenal ones were shocking, but at least here, benefit of the doubt. And the mad thing is, across the entire game, this scenario here, a player in this position lumping it into the box, was all that Manchester City really had. And it took me ages to put this graph together from several other graphs, right? But this is every attempted pass into Manchester United's box by a Man City player in that game, either successful or otherwise, right? And you'll see one or two dotted around the place, mostly just hopeful punts, but everything considered and coordinated is from this left-sided area. It's mostly Jeremy Doku, but also Foden's in there, De Bruyne's in there, a couple of others, right? And the reason I'm showing you this is because I want everybody to appreciate the performance of Harry Maguire. This, by contrast, was every single defensive header, clearance, interception that came into Manchester United's box, and you'll see a big chunk of those, and especially the ones in the really important areas, are from Maguire. Barring one freak cross that looped up into the area, he and De Ligt and Martinez were superb at defending that aerial space, which does bode well for fixing what was a fairly major problem. And also, can I just say, I would like the narrative around Harry Maguire to change soon, please. The guy was a massive, massive, massive victim of the problems inherent in 𝗕𝗫𝗏𝗧𝗏's brand of football. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because I did about 400 videos on it last season, but you remember they had a really, really high press that was actually quite lax and quite uncoordinated, and then to sort of offset the sort of lack of pace, the defence would sit really deep, so you had this huge gap in between all the lines, and it basically meant that Harry Maguire spent most of his season having 3 or 4 much quicker players run at him with no midfield cover. And understandably, that then made him look like a prat. But you see, in a game like this, where the tactical identity is clearly better, where the press is more coordinated, where the team is functioning better as a system, Maguire all of a sudden looks like an excellent aerial presence who's competent on the ball, and he's sitting in the middle of this back three, man-marking a player like Haaland. And oh no, would you believe it? He looks a much better player. And in fact, it makes such a difference that this is now the reality of Man United's tactical identity. Like, this is them penning Manchester City into their own half for large portions of this game. They know what they're doing. The structure is in place, and it's really difficult to not only play through that, but to burst it wide open. Like, City had shot for confidence and they're not taking the kind of risks they previously were. But even in these situations where things do develop, Man United are then able to force them back into their own half, into much safer areas. Like, the whole thing did not make for an exciting game, but from a tactical perspective, they looked really well adjusted. And it would be so easy to just be like, oh, Man City are bad now, that's why they can't create anything. But this is the combined pass map of De Bruyne, Foden, Silva and Gundogan, all still incredible individual players across 90 minutes. And just, if you've got to pause the video for a second, just do it. But like, take a second to try and find any arrows that end in anything resembling a threatening area. Like, they're so far back and they're so sideways. And that's part of how coordinated and structured Man United's press were. Like, they kept ending up in these areas as well because they were getting forced further and further back. And yes, they are having a very, very bad time, and yes, you're not expecting them to be ripping teams open, but you've still got to go out there and force that upon them. And Man United did. But now, the slight downside to all of this, because that is step one if you want to go get a result against a team like Manchester City, find a way to restrict what it is they want to do to you. But step two, arguably the more important step if you want to win, is find a way to do things to them. And Man United actually struggled with that. Like, no, this isn't a very small smudge on the screen. This is Rasmus Højlund's entire touch map across the course of the game. Like, this Amorim system, let's get rid of City, for you, is specifically designed to create chances for a centre forward. Like, you get all the width, you get these two sort of playing balls through to them. Look at how many goals Victor Gyökeres scored playing in this system. They're not yet finding a way into him. And the word you keep seeing about this game is that both teams were being very safe with it. Manchester City, because they've lost faith in their system and they don't really want to be the one who makes a mistake. And Manchester United, because they haven't yet discovered their system. So all the sort of interplay, the structures, the repetition, the patterns, things like that, they're not quite clicking. But my friends, if there is one consistent, eternal rule about football, and yeah, obviously there's absolutely loads of them. It's that if the system cannot do something, you need an individual to do it. And that individual was Amad Diallo. And not only is he clearly a very, very special player, but he's probably the only one on the pitch you would describe as playing this whole game with zero fear. Now, after the Mason Mount substitution, Bruno Fernandes went and played on the left-sided 10 position, which I think is just as good for him as being slightly deeper. But obviously, he's the one you're going to want to have in this central area sort of predominantly. And if we look at his heat map, you can see that he's obviously drifting out into these left-hand spaces because that's where he's supposed to be. But also, when they get on the ball and something's happening, he spends a lot of time in this area. And because of the way these two 10s have to like dovetail in Amorim's system, if you've got one who wants to be spending his time here but will drift out to that side, then the other one has to start wide, help stretch the play, but then drift in. And this was his contribution to that match. You can see he does most of his running down that channel. That allowed Mazraoui to actually do underlaps on him occasionally, but that's a whole other story. And his passes are all from this area into really, really dangerous zones. Like, just think back to that Manchester City one, how few times they were able to find a ball anywhere into this area. Diallo was doing that every single time he got on it. But crucially, vitally, very excitingly, in my opinion, look at all the little splodges around the box, because he doesn't just pass it and then leave it. Once he lets that go and the chance is now in the middle of the pitch, he then goes and attacks the goal. He wants to be a goal threat on top of everything else. And that, combined with how hard he works off the ball, got Man United both of their goals. Now, the first one, Matheus Nunes is never going to want to see again as long as he lives, but Amad is alive to the possibility that this ball could be coming back, and because it's late in the game and City are playing it very safe, there could be something that happens here if he closes it down, and there is something that happens here when he closes it down. He wins it. And the thing is, it's not actually a terrible, terrible pass. He makes the right decision, I think, in going to Ederson. And it's not like he completely shorts it. It's just that Amad is so sharp and so on it. He beats Ederson to it. Like, it's easy to forget because the foul that then comes from it, which again is a lovely bit of skill and good awareness to basically sort of buy it back off Nunes. But Ederson does nearly get to that. It's not quite the howler that Amad made it look. But then the winning goal, and oh my God, the winning goal. Now, when Lisandro Martinez picks up the ball at the start of this move, City are a bit of a mess in the midfield, let's say, but it's not really a massive issue. There's no real obvious option on beyond him either going to the centre-back here or launching it to the far side and then everybody just moving across. And what I think is particularly interesting about this goal is, like, how many times have you seen one of these, like, great over-the-top in-behind balls where the defender is lining up to kick it at the same time the run starts? Like, it's good coordination, right? They've clearly worked on it and thought about it. But that is not what is going on here. You can see Amad has already started to make this run. Martinez isn't looking for him. He's not winding up to hit this over the top. Such is the length of the run and the amount of players he goes past. Martinez has time to, like, watch it for a bit. But the moment he does strike that ball, if you freeze it there, this shows you everything that keeps going wrong with Manchester City at the minute, right? You cannot be that high and then be in this shape. And that's because when the ball comes, if you look at Man United, Diallo, 𝗍𝗓𝗓, Amad, they're all trying to run into that space. So what you've got to do is, you've got to drop. And only 2 of these 4 defenders are actually alive to that. Matheus Nunes, give him his credit, he makes the correct run. And this is Diaz, clearly their best defender, doing the same thing. But this is Kyle Walker, whose defensive sort of wherewithal has correctly been roundly mocked the last couple of months. And this is Gvardiol, where now you see why Pep almost exclusively likes to play him as a left back. Like, just his what's going on around him isn't very good. Like, just to be blunt here, if Manchester City do what they're supposed to do, which is all drop together and stay in a line, then Gvardiol is here. He's 5 yards ahead of Amad. There's no possible chance that comes of this. But he doesn't. He's too slow to do it, which means there's just this huge gap between Diaz and Nunes that Martinez is more than capable of dropping the ball into, which he does. But what happens after that is why I wanted to use the word fearless with Amad, because the 2 decisions he makes, 1, try and flick it over Ederson, and then 2, just go and hit the thing, are not what you're supposed to do in that situation. You're supposed to play the percentages. You should try and, like, knock it past him and get a touch. Or when it comes down, you don't know what's around you. Maybe you've got teammates joining. Try and get that under control and see if you can lay it across. But he doesn't think about any of that. He just tries to knock it over the goalkeeper. And then as it drops down out of the sky, roll it into the net. And he is rewarded spectacularly for that courage. And just as one small final thing, I don't know if this is getting made as much a bigger deal of as it should be, but 𝗕𝗓𝗓 can just put his foot on that ball and gently sort of tap it off the line. But for some reason, his brain goes, we should try and backheel this as it comes between our legs. Now, the Premier League have legitimately threatened to put a hit out on me if I ever use match footage again. And while I'm not scared of them, also, obviously, really I am, but I'm going to do this anyway because you need to see Ruben Dias's reaction to this backheel in real time. To quote Kevin Costner in the movie JFK, which was also about as light-hearted and joyous a watch as most of this game of football, back and to the left. Back and to the left. Back and to the left. So yes, bottom line with this game of football, if you're going to come up with a game plan which successfully nullifies a team like Manchester City, regardless of what form a team like Manchester City will be in, and you've got at least one player who's not afraid to take the big risks, to take the big chances, to make the big runs, to try the low percentage stuff, then you deserve to win, in my opinion. You don't just deserve to point. You deserve to win that game of football. So, well done, Ruben Amorim. Well done, Manchester United. Well done, Amad Diallo. You deserve to win that. I love how I'm saying that as if, like, I get to award the 3 points to a team just because I liked how they play. That's not how it works yet, but if it was on this channel, ta-da! Anyway, though, yes, I do always go slightly out of my mind in these. On a Monday, if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to us here on FourFourTwo. Or, why not, invest in me personally. You can get me on all the different social medias, X, formerly known as Twitter, Instagram. I'm doing Blue Sky now. I've got a little thing going on, which you should Google and try and check out. All of my validation is external. So every single one of you that does that gives me the good chemicals. But hey, more important than all of that is the comment section, because Man United fans, how did that feel? Obviously, the Arsenal result was quite rough. Nottingham Forest, question marks starting to be asked, but then to turn up at the Etihad and spring a not too shocking 2-1 win. Are we invested? Are we feeling this? Are we with Amorim for the long run? Do we like the 3-back system and the centre forward thing? Brain's completely fallen out here. Let us know down below all thoughts, feelings, comments, poetry verse, the songs of your heart. I like to read them all. Until next time though, yes, that has been this, and I have been me, and you have been you, and all of it was absolutely fantastic. I've been Adam Clery, and I will see you soon. Bye.